Going on, my friends? I am Rick. This is your seat at the table, and it is actually kind of a gloomy November day here for Iowa. Typical, I guess. We woke up to some flurries out there. It's in the 20s, which means, of course, the freeze is on. Whether or not it will stay this way, I don't know. The weather's up and down this year quite a bit, which is we had 70-degree weather 2 days ago. I mean, it's kind of a very brutal changeover. There's always things that need done outside. The wind's blowing pretty hard today, and it's cold. We need to get some plastic up on some of the north-facing windows just to help cut down on things, because as you well know, cost of heat and everything's going up this year. Still got some flurries falling out there. They're predicting a 40% chance of actual snow on Wednesday, so we'll see how that plans out. Anyway, what we are looking at here is BattleTech TRO 3055. This was when the clans, this was in, the clans had invaded, the Battle of Tukayyid had taken place, and now we had this 15-year truce, and we introduced introduced a whole bunch of new Battlemechs and various game supplements and novels and things like that, and so, of course, that's what your technical readouts are all about. So, take a gander at that. $15. $15 in 1992. Right? I bought this the same year I started dating my current wife. Good gravy, has it been that long? Has it been that long? 30 years, 30 plus years now? So, we have, in the wake of the invasion, interfered by the clans, both sides struggled to strengthen their positions to prepare for what many now refer to the truce end. New Battlemechs have serviced both in intersphere units among the clans. Technological advances that were in their infancy in 3050 have come of age, are being used in bold new designs. Blessed Order has assigned me to prepare this manual to keep our members up to date on the sweeping changes and weapons being developed for the day of the intersphere and the clans clash once more. As everyone knows, a piece of Tukayyid is only a respite. Clans will not rest in their dream of capturing Terra, nor will we in our zeal to defend the homeland of mankind. Isn't it ironic that in the current line, 100-odd years later, it took a long time for the clans to actually conquer Terra? And they did it in such a, I don't know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That is for a series of videos that I'm thinking about doing down the road. So we have intersphere prototypes, which would have been prototypes of 3050. And there's a lot of good stuff in here. I mean, whenever I do these TROs, I point out there are a slew of BattleTech YouTube websites out there that produce awesome videos on individual in-look views of the mechs and their capabilities and their variants and things like that. And it's just not something I'm going to do because one, I cannot do anywhere near as good a video as they do on that stuff, and two, I'm being brutally honest, my lore is pretty shaky. Anything that takes place in the last 15-20 years, I mean, I'm still playing catch up on a lot of stuff. Of course, it helps that there's a huge 60-year gap in things, but there's still a lot of stuff and a lot of material in the post-Dark Age era that I don't have access to, and I'm just now, in the last year, trying to get back into this and get an understanding. My pre-knowledge is much better. In addition to that, I personally haven't played BattleTech since probably 2014, 2015. There was a window there that I found another person that was interested. They actually were very interested in it because they had one of the updated core books, and we played a few times a month for a while. But it was very basic material, very basic. We just had that single book, and a handful of mech design sheets to go by as templates. And the book that he had, including and I don't remember what version it was, but it included the means to engineer your mech designs, which is basically what we were doing. We were making house mechs that followed the guidelines that was set down by, and I believe that would have been Catalyst. Very into Fan Pro or WizKids, or it was Catalyst. I'm not sure when they transitioned over. So anyway, one of the things that when I look for TROs, And there's been a number of TROs that come out in the last few years, and I made a mistake of buying one a year and a half back, and I was very upset when I bought it because, well, it's a great thing to have. If you're not into BattleTech, if you're not a collector of this material, then any of these TROs in current form is an awesome investment for you, because as you can see, you'll get a lot of mechs, a lot of information and backstories, and a bit of flavor on the mechs, variants, even some captures of the occasional pilots and things like this, or some unique characters or what have you. The downside was for me is that when your budget is, when you're literally $40 is the difference sometimes between buying groceries and buying less groceries. To spend $40 or $50 on something like this for my personal entertainment purposes is hard. And I've had a few people say, well, I should get a Patreon page, I should do this, I should do that. A, I don't know how to go about doing it. I got a lot of things I'd like to do, but it's B, I don't have enough subscribers in my personal mind to believe that that Patreon page would do any good, other than be something I'd forget I have. And the other side is it's just I have to budget things very tightly. So when I bought that TRO, it was at a bookstore, which in and of itself was a shock, because the game store in question, called Mayhem Comics and Games, on the west side of Des Moines, had only a few BattleTech items on the shelf. They have a whole slew of Games Workshop material. Go surprise, surprise. But as you well know, if you're into BattleTech and you've been trying to buy stuff, most of it you have to buy online. You have to order it online, either from Catalyst or from some subsidiary of Catalyst or somebody who's working in hand with them. But most game stores and stuff, for whatever reasons, don't stock this stuff on the shelves. And in reality, there really isn't enough constant material coming out from Catalyst. If you go back to the FASA era, when these books were put out, FASA was putting out 2 and 3 books a month. There'd be a good source book, or maybe 2, or a source book and a minor, I want to call it a module, but that's not the way I would go. At least 2 to 4 novels. So every month there was at least a half dozen things related to BattleTech coming out, and and then there'd be always, at least every 2 months, there would be another mech model, another mini that could be acquired, and odds and ends. Now Catalyst is doing a great job, don't get me wrong, and they put out a lot of material online that you have to download as a PDF and deal with PDF stuff. I had a brief conversation with my boss's wife the other day at work, and she was asking if I had a tablet. And of course, my first thing out of my mouth is, that's a rich person's toy, and she didn't like that comment. And truth, what the hell would I use a tablet for? I mean, I have a laptop at home, and I have my cell phone in the truck. And unless I want to piggyback that tablet off my cell phone and burn through minutes, I can't use it for a whole lot of stuff. And I'm not familiar with enough with a tablet to make myself believe I would need one. And then there's the issue of maintaining it. Tablets, well, she goes, well, they're only like $60. I said, well, that may be cheap, but they're not cheap. It's just like a cell phone. My cell phone's $45. It's cheap, but it's not, because I have to replace it every year because of work issues. Something happens to it at work. Well, the same thing with the damn pad. So what would I do with a pad, with an iPad or something of that nature? Take it to the bathroom with me? Well, that's what I do with these things anyway. So you can get all that stuff that they put out, and they put out a lot of more smaller end things that way. Now, on the positive side, of course, is anything they put out modern day era in a PDF formats is basically there for perpetually. That's something a lot of the newer, younger players don't have the advantage, or they have an advantage that we don't have, and in a way it's their loss too, because a lot of the oldest material book stuff, the things like, you will not ever get a PDF of this unless somebody like me takes the time to scan this onto it and make a PDF of it, and then it's kind of a bootleg PDF. It's not an official thing. It's just the same thing. So when they put out a TRO, and there's the last two that I saw are basically rehashes of older stuff. They've taken the older TRO material and they have done updated versions. So they've it's still the same material, in some cases verbatim the exact same material, and just put it in another more modern book, which is great. Awesome thing. But it's a terrible waste of money for me. So they're currently coming out with, or they have just came out with the TRO for Dark Ages. And I went and saw a couple other people's reviews on it, video-wise, and I read what I could on the internet about it, because let's be fair to Catalyst, you don't do a good job of defining what the crap you're putting out is. You really don't. You just kind of throw some crap out there with a few paragraphs, and we're just supposed to go, oh, this is something I absolutely must have. Instead, they could do a little better job with the internet and the abilities they have, the social media crap they have today. They could do a better job of introducing what it is that they're presenting for sale, in my opinion. Instead of waiting for a third party to purchase it and then critique it and decide whether or not it was worth having. Anyway, apparently it is full of mech designs and things from an era that I have very little knowledge of and absolutely nothing or very little material to go with. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is something that I can invest a little bit of money in. And so I bit the bullet and charged another $40 or $47 or whatever it was to my credit card, which I really absolutely should not do. And it's now en route. So I hope to be able to do a video of that in the near future. You know, it's just like the mech designs. When we look at the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mech designs, part of my mind starts to rebel a little bit. Why do we have such a huge, massive variety, and what was the point, other than for the game company to produce yet more material for you and I to purchase and consume, which I get. And from an in-world standing, a lot of these designs were intended to superimpose or replace much older designs that were either very hard to do to manufacture or impossible to manufacture as of the 3025 era and the 3050 era, or they were so obscure that they ceased to be in production in any at all and had whittled away to mere museum pieces and the occasional oddity, or completely out of touch. So they wanted to reintroduce something. They reintroduced a more modern version. The other side of that, of course, is innovation and development. It's just like the next automobile. This is the reason why we have so many versions, so many different versions of the same thing. They're not an SUV is an SUV is an SUV is an SUV. The only thing different between the 6 different manufacturer versions and the 20-odd variants that they produce of an SUV is aesthetics and functions. So within the auxiliary functions, or the things we choose to add on, how fancy we want. Do we want the heated seats? Do we not want the heated seats? Do we, that kind of thing. So the same scenario. Each house is trying to, it's not that they're trying to outproduce the next guy. I mean, they would like to, but they're trying to produce something that's unique to themselves, that fills a niche or fills a need. And that's where we find some of these others crop up. And it's typical of most designs. Some are better than others. Some are not. Some should never have seen production. And although I haven't seen anything in recent eras to show me of a design that falls grossly flat short. A lot of people lambast their urban back in the urban for damn good reason. It's so slow. It's under this. It's under that. Mainly, it's so slow for its weight class. The Charger, the CGR1 Charger, when it came out, it was so. Are you effing me? A bunch of small lasers on an assault mech. What? Right? So, I mean, I haven't actually seen any real boondoggle type designs of that nature in recent times. That doesn't mean that they're not around, but I haven't seen them. And, as if you're a follower of Big Red's channel with his podcasts, and he does gobs of stuff on the mechs, he's doing an incredible job of covering a lot of mechs, but I haven't heard all of them. And when I just look at this book alone, and I look at what he's produced, and I think, well, he's done this and he's done that, but he didn't do this, that, or the other thing. So maybe he's not covering 100% of them. I think he intends to, but he just hasn't got around to those yet. and so on and so forth. So there are mediums, lights, heavies. As you can see, lots of new designs, lots of new types. Mostly they do the same thing as other designs. Some are a little better, some are a little worse, but that's typical of just about every design out there. Nothing's really radically changed here. So we get into the assault mechs. Some are slicker. Artwork, the artwork is pretty basic. It's improved over the earlier stuff that we've seen in the early days of Facet, but their CGL has Facet, this because at the time when Facet was putting this out, their earliest stuff, well, they had a much tighter budget. Since then, Facet grew and did real well. Ironically, I point out that BattleTech, when it came out, if you look at the artwork that they put out for Shadowrun, it was produced by Facet as well, there was much better artwork going on for Shadowrun than BattleTech in a lot of in the earliest renditions of it. And I don't know if that was a flavor thing or a choice thing on their part. That's what they wanted to do. I'm not 100% sure. But it makes me wonder just a little bit sometimes, because it is what it is, right? Anyway, off on the tangents on things. We do get into some stuff that I do find. So when we get into the clan section, we talk about clan updates. So inner sphere refits. I have wondered when I seen these when they first came out, if these weren't what, if the succession awards hadn't pounded the technical base nearly into the Stone Age, that these wouldn't have been similar to what we would have seen in future designs for things of these natures. When we look at the existing mechs of the era and the obvious upgrades when technology came out, the Star League was already producing most of the technology that this room just gets as stuffy as all get out in a hurry. It feels like a damn closet sometimes. I'm sweating in here and I don't like it. It's part of being an old fat guy, right? I'm fixing to go get my fan back. My wife keeps stealing it and sticking it in the laundry room, so when she does she etches and paints things, and then she puts a clear coat on them, and it wants to get it to dry faster, she puts the fan on it. But I kind of want that fan in here. That's just me. But anyway, I wondered that if these refits would not have been similar to what these evolution of these mechs would have been anyway. With modern advancements of technology, had a lot of that technology not become absent or completely non-existent to the houses. So we would have seen improvements. I mean, here is an assault mech version of the Phoenix Hawk, the Griffin, the Shadowhawk. The Shadowhawk has always been a beautiful mech design, but a very poor performer on the battlefield. It's a little overgunned, but it can't handle the heat. It's too much ammo dependency. It doesn't have enough armor protection, which makes it a tinderbox just waiting to go up. And yet it's used heavily in the lore, in the novels and stories and things like this, and played up to be much better than it is. So if you took it and you refurbished it with modern Clan era or Star League era technology, how vastly different the machine becomes. In this case, the Clan variant drops 10 tons, uses double heat sink, so it takes care of the heat issue. It increases actually amount of the armor that it has. The addition of ferro fibrous armor and an Indo-steel chassis. Most of its loadout becomes either extended range or pulse version lasers with streak SRM2s in case to protect the ammo. So this becomes a much more functional Shadowhawk design, in my personal opinion. The same one we see with the updated version of the Rifleman. They've done a lot of tweaking to this to make it much more effective of a machine. So it just makes me wonder what could have been, what might have been, kind of error kind of stuff. I'm kind of a person for liking to go down rabbit holes. And we got a number of clan-based, we call them second-line mechs, because these are not OmniMech designs. They're mostly preferred to be used by their their garrison units and their Salome units, because the mainline units prefer to have the OmniMech designs for good reason. And here's one. When I first saw the Behemoth, I thought I could get behind this one. This thing's a powerhouse. A pair of Gauss cannons, a pair of large pulse lasers, and one small pulse laser just to keep people honest. I just like those. I like the appearance of it. It looks like a brute. And then, of course, some of them that don't look. And here's the one where anybody always goes, what good is the autocannon 2? The autocannon 2. What good is it? What good is it? You know, individually, it's not. And the biggest problem, of course, being is for its what it does is grossly overweight. I mean, it really, the weight causes problems. You can't put enough autocannon 2s on a machine and to really get a full barrage value out of it based on the limitations of the weight. Well, one of the things they managed to do is to downsize the autocannon and we get the autocannon Ultra. So this is where we see the case in point. This is a weapon with 5 tons of weight, which is excessive when you compare it to a lot of other weapon systems. And then you have to add ammo. So the Kraken is basically 10 Ultra AC2 Ultras, and we're talking 50 tons of this 100-ton mech is in its cannons, and it puts these things in batteries. So you have basically the equivalent of an AC-20 shotgun or a multi-fire. This thing would be brutal for anti-aircraft, in my opinion, but what they use it for and what I think it ought to be used for, I don't know. It's a matter of conjecture. I have never fielded one of these things on the field and tried to put one into its paces, so I don't know. If you know how good Kraken is and isn't, by all means let me know. I haven't seen a video on it yet, so I don't know if it's something that somebody would make a video on down the road, but maybe they will. And then we get into some more of the clan OmniMech designs. And aerospace superiority. Blech. So at the time of the technical readout 3050 was prepared, we possessed almost no data on a clan aerospace unit, instead providing an inaccurate and sketchy report. Concentrating our efforts on further research. Gathering intelligence on units glimpsed only briefly during high-speed sorties is considerably more difficult than reporting on relatively slow-moving ground targets. However, so we have only now gathered sufficient data. Unlike clan Battlemechs, their aerospace fighters use technologically advanced components and reconfigurable pod. Like the clan reconfigurable pod technologies, OmniFighters, as they're known, share lethal flexibility OmniMechs. Yes, they are. There's some pretty potent boogers. So what they're getting at is some of the very early game supplements that came out for BattleTech, things like the Clan Wolf source book and the Jade Falcon source book and things like that, did have a selection of mechs and vehicles in the back, but they didn't really have much in the way of fighters and aerospace fighters. And so this is where they're starting to get woke up to that little niche of the game, and or adding some additions to it, which is something you wanted. I mean, for the majority of laymen in BattleTech, aerospace combat is not a big thing. It's just like naval combat. There are better game systems for dealing with naval combat than BattleTech, and naval combat in BattleTech should be rare and horrific in large part because the machines are large and horrific. I mean, they're not Star Destroyers or Starfleet cruisers by any means. So just saying. And then aerospace fighters, and yes, we have aerospace combat rules. We have entire box sets and supplements for it, and there are games that do revolve around it. If you wanted a full roundhouse campaign, and you had all that access, well, one of those things would be invading the system or the planet that your forces are going to raid or attack. And perhaps prior to the mechs being landed, we want to run those. We want them drop ships to run a gamut of aerospace combat. So we would pair that up and we'd put it on the table and we would fight it out. And if we're lucky, our mech carriers and troop transports all got to the ground without getting too badly just beat up. And if it was a bad day and we lost enough of them and before we got to the atmosphere, perhaps we were going to turn around and go home. At that point, you cut your losses and run, and the defenders won the day, and vice versa. Now, when you get onto ground combat, the occasional starfighter or aerospace fighter, you bring them in, and they can be game changers in a lot of ways. For starters, they're much harder to deal with from a ground perspective. Your ground mechs are not suited to go after aerospace fighters head to head on a regular basis. That's just, there's a handful of mech designs that are, but that's just it. There's a handful of them. And generally your whole units are not going to be dominated by these things. So that's the way that works. So a couple of them in the combat mix can make a big difference in how the game plays out. The other side of it is the mechanics for using aerospace fighters are different than they are when they're on one-on-one a little bit. So their turnaround is a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer for them. Otherwise, they can't linger in place. They're not hovercraft. They're not helos. They can't just park half a mile up and just shell the ground targets at whim. They got to fly, and they got to come in, they got to turn, and they got to come back around. It takes time. So the rules were set to kind of limit the impact, the devastating impact that aerospace fighters can have on ground units over time. So, and I don't know of anybody who's, I've seen it in the novels, I've seen it in some of the books, but I've never seen it, I've never been at a table where I've had one side whose total goal was nothing but aerospace fighters attacking the ground target. I suppose it happens. I suppose it's a thing. I personally have never witnessed it. Anyway, this is Rick. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Till next time. Going on, my friends. This is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time, I hope you guys have yourself